Hi David, lovely to see you today.
Suki, great to see you too.
Thank you for joining me and thank you for talking about the future of the industry. You've been both a client and agency person for a long time in our industry, and so I guess you can look at both sides, but more latterly at RBS and at Barclays. What do you think the biggest challenges have been for marketeers during this COVID crisis?
Oh my word, there have been so many, haven't they? I mean, as I've said to you before, I've had the joy of viewing this through the lens of slow living, not doing the old day job, and therefore not being stuck on an endless Zoom call or an endless Teams call. So I think challenge number one was probably personal well-being and well-being of your team beyond that, and actually focusing on the people as we went through the early phase of uncertainty. You know, as we're recording this, we're back in what you neatly branded before COVID-2. As you know, I think this continues. And actually what you can see is everybody's adjusted, and hats off to everybody actually really, really well to having to cope with the difficulties of working through screens. I think that's enabled more speed and more focus on getting stuff done. So I do see organizations being more agile. I do see decisions getting taken faster, and I do see people being empowered, all of which is really good. But I also see a vast amount of time being wasted with planning and replanning and scenario this and scenario that. And I think it's time for people to be more pragmatic about what needs to get done. Because, you know, if you're looking at your bottom line, whichever side of the fence you're on, it's suffering, it's under pressure. If you're looking at your top line, in most sectors, it's slowing down. So, you know, how do you get growth back in the top line? How do you manage the bottom line to make sure you've got a successful ongoing business? These are the challenges that every exec table will be having. And for a CMO, whatever they're called these days, to keep the eye on the customer, to keep the eye on the value proposition, and to make sure you're delivering for the top line as efficiently as you can, and you're not wasting time, strikes me as, you know, where you need to be in the zone.
Yeah.
Sorry,
no, I mean, that really neatly just brings that whole challenge, doesn't it? That's so much to think about. That's such a big challenge. And you've got these real shifting sands, as you say, because it's not as straightforward as it would be in a kind of pre-COVID time where at least there was some predictability with what was going to go on. You know, I'm interested in, you know, what you were saying around, you know, all the facets of the marketing, but also the people. So you've got that commercial part and you've got the people part. How do you marry those together at this moment in time, do you think?
Well, let's start with the people part first. I mean, obviously, in the phase we're in now, some of the economic impact is being felt. Many people will have moved from furlough to redundancy. So, you know, treating people fairly and properly through that and being mindful of the impact on colleagues who remain is key. Thinking hard about where everybody is, and this is at the heart of, you know, let's reset. Some people have coped remarkably well with this and are fine on their own in their bubble. Other people are completely stressed. You've got to know where they are, and you've got to enable them to work however they choose to through these difficult bits. But I can also see that some people are working to rule and kind of going, hang on a minute, it's 9 to 5 and that's it. So how do you motivate people at the same time as being fair? So that's the people bit, I think. And I do see a whole focus on well-being that I hadn't seen before, which I think is great. I see a whole focus on flexible working and tolerance of people's needs to work in different ways, which is also fantastic. And by the way, I particularly see that on some of the agency side of the fence, where I think they've really adapted incredibly well to this and found new ways of working at pace and supporting clients through it as well. So I think all of that bit is key. I do then think the trickier side is the commercial side, because the reality is somebody will be wanting you to generate growth that's simply not possible because of the change in the environment. And having the tough conversation that says, you know, what numbers are doable here and what's a stretch number is probably, you know, that sits at the top of the house. So whoever's leading marketing's got to own that difficult conversation and protect the budget necessary to drive growth and indeed activity. But I also think, that avoiding wasting time speculating what could happen and controlling the controllables is all you can do. I love that Keith Weed quote about miserable people get miserable results. So this is a time to be optimism, but rooted in reality, rooted in where are we, what can we get done, how can we get it done better, faster, with more commercial outcome, I think is what everybody's trying to do. And you can see that some companies are really flexing and winning through this. And again, I'm impressed by the companies again. What a great time to hire this is. Let's hire talent, because there's plenty of talent available. There are plenty of disillusioned people with the way their companies have worked. So companies that are winning are investing in talent, investing in marketing, investing in well-being, and quite a joy to behold. I won't name them because that would be inelegant, but there aren't enough of them. That's what I will say.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of spirit of optimism would go a very long way through what's going to be a long next phase.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a long next phase, isn't it? And I think when we come to the workshop and we all come together, we can name some of those companies and perhaps learn from some of them. And I think the other piece that I'm seeing exactly plays into that, David, which is, the senior leadership team might have got to grips with where they think they're going and holding on to some objectives and where they think their ambition is and maybe even their budgets, but that hasn't filtered down into the organization. So you can see that real, more than I've ever seen before, actually, a kind of lack of clarity and focus of thinking of the objectives and a lack of communication. And I don't mean communication about how are you, we're okay, and we're sort of, because I think people are doing that really well, but actually real clarity of thinking about where they're going and what they're going to do and how they're going to get there.
Yeah, and I think this is, some of that does involve the tough conversations as well, because, we've got lots of companies whose workforces are going to have to shrink. Again, that conversation needs to be owned and delivered and done in the right way. And that's always a tough one. But uncertainty is not a motivator. Uncertainty is a drain on energy. And there's enough uncertainty in the world without a company inflicting more. So as much as you can get clarity of thought and certainty, and that's usually, I think, when you've got clear tasks, that need to get done this month, next month, but trying to plan beyond 3 months is bordering on the impossible. I mean, financial market obligations apart, but I would encourage people to keep optimistic, keep focused on tasks and communicate as clearly as they can.
Yeah. And if you were still, or I know that you are going to be doing new things in the industry, but what, as we think into difficult to think more than 3 months ahead, but if we think to 2021, 22, what do you think are going to be the key drivers of growth from a marketing customer perspective?
I mean, I think a really sharp understanding of your customer value proposition. What is it that you're doing that's delivering value to your customers, whoever they are? And that, of course, is going to need to be insight and data-led and smarter use of data and intelligence, and a really hard look at the value proposition, because many companies have been able to kid themselves about what they've been doing. This is really sharpened. Hang on a minute. Where are we delivering value? How can we do more of it? So real insight focus on that, real use of data. I think real speed to market and speed to flex to the changes. So some categories who were previously not using e-commerce at all have found themselves dragged into the world of e-commerce. Others that were already there have been encouraged to grow faster. So there's a shifting, but the need for omni-channel presence, omni-channel marketing and thinking is really clear. And actually what that brings with it is the problem of how do you align everybody internally around one task, because silos have often got in the way of that. And again, what this seems to me to have done is force silos to get broken. So that's good news.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think to then, as we go into the next phase, trying to keep those silos from not going back into silos is a real challenge, isn't it?
It is.
And then the client agency partnership. We've seen some really good ways of working. Actually, I think we've seen some real collaboration. I think we've seen both client companies really embracing agencies and agencies stepping up and working in quite different ways. From your external perspective, what do you think that partnerships, what's going to make the future partnerships really work and help with this growth, both from an agency and a marketing community?
Well, I think you've probably used the necessary word, which is an understanding that this is a partnership. Now more than ever, working closely together and finding ways to work more effectively is what's going to drive success. I've seen the result of that, before any of this happened. If you build the right relationships, you get great people, you reward them fairly, and you motivate them, they will always deliver for you. And they'll do that even through the complexity that now exists. Now, I think, one of the problems, if you're an agency with a massive overhead attached to the rent for your offices, for instance, what are you going to do about that? Well, a couple of interesting solutions there where people say, actually, you know what, we don't need offices. Let's give that money that we were going to pay in rent to shelter, and let's use their meeting rooms when we need to. And it was Pablo that did that, and hats off to them for a fantastic action. And I think, the understanding that, so what, they don't have an office. What they've got is great people who can work like this, and the meeting rooms as necessary. So an understanding of everybody's dealing with this series of challenges, however they need to, and you need to partner in that. It's not a time as a client to tell agencies what to do, because it's a time to empathize with, they've got the same set of problems as well. But I see some really good partnerships. I mean, I think there was some early poor behavior around, we can save some money here, we don't need this, we don't need that, presumably you can cut your fees. And most people are being found out on that one. So I think there's better behavior now, but there probably is a proper shift into, clients need to understand agencies are partners in trying to drive their growth for them, and trying to do the right thing. And that is going to shift the mental model. It probably have to shift how remuneration works as well. But let's see what actually happens. And I look forward to hearing, especially what Johnny's got to say about that, because of course, people like the AND partnership have some interesting models where they are insourcing stuff as well as outsourcing and trying new things. And actually to see from afar, which I now do, the internal studio, which is an AND partnership studio. Everybody's working from home in Gogarburn. There's nobody in Gogarburn, but they're all doing better work than they ever did on my watch, which is probably my fault. and they're doing it really at pace. So it's great to see. But I think, that being open about the challenges and having big ears is necessary. And at my age, unfortunately, that's what you get, big ears.
Big ears. Oh, I think big ears is a great thing to have. And then just very finally, David, if, your children, young people coming into the industry, what would you say to somebody trying to get into the industry now? What's the real benefit of still trying to even get into a marketing or an agency job?
Well, as you know, I'm a massive fan of this industry that's given me a great career so far, and hopefully will continue to. And I think it's a fantastic industry to be in, because let's do agency first. You get to meet really diverse people doing diverse things on diverse clients, and you learn like a sponge if you choose to. So as a point of entry to anybody's career, an agency is a great place to be. You're going to have to work hard, but you're going to learn a lot. The client side brings a similar thing, a bit more formal version probably of learning. But either side of the marketing fence, you're going to be in the segment of the business which is going to drive what happens next, because everybody's got to tech enable themselves. But the companies that understand customers, deliver great value propositions, deliver them in compelling fashion to build great brands, are going to win. And that's why you should join this industry, because it's a great place to make a difference.
Yeah, couldn't say it better. Thank you, David. Brilliant. Well, I really look forward to the workshop next week and you being part of it. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Look forward to it. Thank you, Suki.